All right, hi. Welcome to Mammal's Community Spotlight Storytelling and Conservation Panel. My name is Rob Whitehair, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Mammalz. Today is a day for celebrating our growing mammals community, showcasing creators from around the world, storytelling about nature through live streaming. For all of you who are tuning in from around the world, live streaming is this wonderful social experience. So we encourage you to say hi in real-time chat and comment and ask questions. In fact, during our panel today, in addition to listening to our amazing panelists, we'll be fielding questions from you as well through chat. So don't be afraid to jump in and be part of the conversation. In addition to celebrating the Mammals Community Day, we are using this opportunity to raise donations for a very awesome organization called Cool Earth. They are a nonprofit that works along with rainforest communities to halt deforestation and its impact on climate change. Our goal is to raise $1,000 today to support food sovereignty and sustainable farming in Cool Earth's Ashaninka project in Peru. If you are able to help us reach that goal, donate toward our Mammals Community Spotlight fundraiser on Tiltify. Look for the donate link in our chat from our chatbot or in the live stream discussion. Donations made through Tiltify are tax deductible. So I've been a wildlife filmmaker for over 20 years, and throughout those years, I have consistently been reminded of the power of storytelling in conservation. It's one of the key reasons that Alex Finden and I started Mammalz, to democratize storytelling around the world, breaking down barriers of money and time so that anybody around the world with something as basic as your phone can tell stories in real time. Today, I am super excited to explore storytelling and conservation with these three very talented people, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to them. Gunjan Menon is an independent conservation filmmaker and National Geographic explorer from India. Passionate about creating impact-driven wildlife and human interest stories, she loves experimenting with cross-genres to expand her reach. Dillon Jones is
Hi.
Dillon Jones is a biologist and science communicator who deconstructs evolutionary theory into stories of the natural world. No matter the seriousness, scope, or scale, his science background is injected into every photo, video, or story he presents. Arun Dayanandan is a Canadian plant and animal conservation biologist and avid science communicator whose research and outreach has taken him to the corners of our planet. When he's not busy scaring fish or counting trees, he can be found brainstorming new ways to reach new audiences. Welcome to you all, and like I said, I'm really thrilled to have you here. I'm looking forward to a lively conversation. Um, so creating and building empathy is one of the key elements of any great story, but it's not something that's often discussed in science and conservation storytelling. In fact, it's often missing from the conservation vernacular completely. We so often get excited about facts, but facts don't really move the needle on emotions. We need to create empathy in order to build compassion, and compassion then can lead to action. How do each of you in your storytelling find this balance between presenting facts and creating empathy with your audience?
That's
Whoever wants
such a
to
good
go
question
first.
because it's such a good question because it is, like you said, so difficult to really balance that. And I think that all of us, whenever I'm going back to like elementary, grade school, how to write a story. They're like, when you want to present yourself, you need your ethos, your logos, and your pathos. And I still get all of them mixed up onto which one actually means which. But it's talking about you need authority, you need facts, and you need this emotion to really get your point across. So I know when I want to get my emotion across to garner empathy, it's really focused on trying to just be authentic in myself and who I am, because I think people really find inauthenticity very, very easily, especially when you inject it into conservation and storytelling, where there are so many passionate people who will fact check you.
I think Dylan's a great example of that. I mean, he's so passionate. I mean, even earlier on in the live stream, watching the various calls, the frog calls, you can see that there's definitely a certain authentic. You can't fake that. That's something I think. If someone and there's a lot of very passionate herpetologists out there, they would be able to know. And I think that's one of the things that also helps bridge kind of this, from that fact side to the communication side, is when we start focusing on those, on the information. Oftentimes that information can also be kind of turned in a way that that general audiences can begin to understand and relate to. So for example, on my end as a researcher and a scientist, we're often trained to not look at animals as kind of from a human perspective, and to look at them as they are. And while there's certainly benefits to that from a scientific perspective, when it comes to storytelling, I find that it's oftentimes actually best to relate to what people have experienced in their own lives. So when I talk about fish and fear and being scared, and what it means for a fish to recognize a predator, I talk about how we might be peeing our pants when we're scared, and how we might smell that, or smell if someone else has peed their pants. And I think a lot of people, it'd be hard to grow up, I think, if you haven't peed your pants at least once. So I like to try to bring some of those common stories, those common elements that I think really it's part of the human condition. So no matter how embarrassing or gross they may be, in telling the stories. And I think that from my perspective is really where those facts can really start to kind of emerge and take on kind of a new meaning and new life.
Yeah, I think for me, much like Dylan said, I like to use a lot of human characters to create empathy. And I think that's because when I was growing up, not a lot of people around me cared about animals. I mean, as kids, we used to get scolded for even feeding, like giving water to stray dogs and cats. And so ask someone like that to care about the rainforest getting destroyed, or, to donate to an donate to save an endangered turtle species. And they just like look at you and be like, okay, get a life. So on the other hand, if you tell them a story of a human character that they can relate to, and show them how passionate this young woman in Nepal is, trying to, like, she's dedicated her life to these animals, she's battling society while doing it. And then suddenly you have their attention, and maybe even a hint of empathy. So I'm not saying everyone's like that, but like my general regular audience would care either ways. But this is like the audience that I like to target and tell stories to, because when you preach outside the choir, when you
audience doesn't need to be hundreds of thousands of people or even millions of people. I mean, depending on your goals, that audience really can be a single individual. It could be as simple as a conversation with someone who's just curious in a one-on-one setting, and for that one person, that's their entire life, right? And so I think there's a lot of benefit, and sometimes we don't think too much about it, especially in kind of the age of social media, when we're looking at follower counts and analytics, and sometimes looking at these very large numbers, but behind every one of those viewers or those likes is an individual, is a person. And I think definitely that, and in my experience, that one-to-one kind of connection can be a great way to foster empathy, especially when it's when people are curious. So I think the first, for me, when we were talking about kind of a trinity in a way of thinking of strategy, for me, one of the first things that I like to do is just kind of share something that I'm passionate about, and oftentimes that leads to further questions from people that are just equally as curious and kind of getting just as excited about a random plant or a fungus somewhere.
I want to just interrupt real quickly to say there's quite a few people who've said hi to all of us. Pataki said hi, Alex Finden said hi, Sandy, Scott, Margot, Brianna, Juan, Yanni, all say hello. And also
Hello.
to all of you
Awesome.
out there, feel free to ask any questions. We're going to open this up pretty soon here to questions. Yeah, let's continue. One of the things I wanted to ask is, to what level do you think, like, obviously if you're communicating on YouTube or or with certain science communications, it's you're on camera. At what level do you insert yourself in this to help connect people to the subjects that you're trying to talk about?
I think on one hand, it really depends on the story being told, and sometimes the stories will tell themselves, and you almost don't have to insert yourself. When I think of those kind of stories, I think of kind of the blue chip BBC documentary style, where you can just almost the story emerges just by watching what's taking place. However, there's other times where something as simple as grass could be fascinating, but it might not necessarily catch the viewer's attention or interest right away, because the interesting component of that might be something that's under the soil. It might relate to nitrogen and how that's relating to grass growing and what grass growing means to pollinators, and kind of this story sometimes might need someone to help the audience be guide them through those different elements of this larger story. So I think when it comes to picking a story, it really sometimes, or rather kind of choosing whether we insert ourselves and how much. I think sometimes a story is kind of the best way to start to think about those.
We have a comment from Pataki. He said, "I love what you said, Arun. That idea, as we tend to think too much on those huge numbers, but one is more than enough when that person feels your message."
Right, and that's something that's like so important. So I know my own like science communication, social media endeavors, it's definitely been a transition. I refused to put myself into things up until about a year and a half ago. I did like a complete like branding shift, like again talking in these things, but I wanted to be more personal, right? I wanted to inject myself, not because that's what I feel comfortable doing. Very introverted person at heart, and like, oh my gosh, the first time turning on that camera, I was like shaking and like, this is not what I can do. But now it's like a regular occurrence. But it's because I had this realization of whenever I thought about why I got into biology, why I care about conservation, why I care about the planet, it's because I think of people. I think of the people that influenced me when I was younger. So like, Steve Irwin was a massive influence to me, and that's really been like, well, it's attaching a person to a message, and I think that's something that I wanted to do as well. And it's been, I think, helpful on many levels. For one, just getting my point across, but also for me personally, I've enjoyed doing this way more when it's like a face of a storyteller versus a nondescript author behind a text that you hope is like so kind of cool.
Yeah, and like what you said, Arun, even if it's that one person that you're connecting with, you're changing that one single life, and that person's like really looking up to you, is getting the message. And I think that's very powerful in itself. So totally agree with you on that.
Right, and that one person knows many people too. It's you never know when your information
it's
gets
like a trickle down effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just daisy chain it down. That's what I was thinking
You
about.
guys
Like,
checked Arun out. Like, what a guy!
I think we should be all checking Gunjan out. I mean, she's an incredibly talented filmmaker. So, I can think of a lot of lives have been changed by her films.
I also want people to check me out, but it's kind of awkward to say.
Well, I mean, the frog
Hey guys,
calls. The
check
frog
Dylan
calls.
out. People have been checking you out anyway, like since the live stream started. So you're there, Dylan.
So here's some other comments. Let's see here. Colin Bell, I love how you guys are using stories to show the natural world to people who might not be able to experience that firsthand. I think that's absolutely integral to the idea of storytelling, and of course empathy too, because people who haven't experienced it, I think in our storytelling, we often have to have empathy for even knowing that, and sort of relating to people who haven't had that experience, and how do we present that information to them. Margot said, "Dillon was shy? ? I can't believe it. Watching you this past year, I would have never guessed it."
Was no, it's an is.
Juan said, my two favorite nature documenting narrators are David Attenborough and Rob Whitehair. that, that's amazing. Thank you, Juan. That's really amazing. Um, it is my goal, actually, for Mammals to actually create the next 1 million beautiful, diverse David Attenboroughs around the planet. Um, so Yanni has a question for everyone. What is your spirit animal and why?
The gloss of salamanders. I'm talking about them later today. I love them so much. I got a picture here. I got a picture here. I got another one I'm still trying to hang up. I really like the gloss of salamanders. They're just so cool. They don't have any lungs. They got projectile tongues. They got suction cup feet. They're like Mission Impossible in an amphibian. They're so cool. I was gonna be polite. I was like, I'll let someone else go, but I was like boiling up. I was like, I need to say this.
What do they sound like?
There's a couple that I've heard can make noises, but I haven't heard anything yet. So I guess that also goes back to like me being shy. They don't really want to talk. They just want to climb trees and eat bugs.
Who else?
What about you, Arun?
Oh, I think from during my travels, I've been fortunate to see a variety of different species, and I think the one that's really stood out the most, and really was kind of one of the big ones that kind of really made me start to think about wildlife from a very young age is the kookaburra, because you can't listen to one without laughing, with it. They're such a funny bird. Their call is amazing, and they're the kingfisher family, and they're really pretty. I mean, their coloration is amazing, but I think the laugh is really what gets me. I've spent over an hour just staring at a single kookaburra like in front of me before, and just completely lost track of time. And I'd do that all over again.
I think my spirit animals would be red pandas, because like I absolutely adore them, and also because they sleep. I mean, they love sleeping, so I can sleep for as many hours as possible, and also because they feel that they can be these fierce animals, and they like get on. I love when they get on their toes and try to scare off predators, and it's really not working. And that's something what people say about me, that I try to act scary and have this like defense mechanism, but yeah, I'm really like not scaring anyone away. So I think a lot like red pandas that way.
Two things. So let's see here. Dillon, Margot says, ha 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 ha. And Margot to Arun, make the bird sound, do it.
Oh God.
Yes.
I couldn't. It's just no. Dillon is the one that's talented here. I wish I could make the bird call.
I can only do frogs.
Dylan,
I can't do.
Can you do a kookaburra?
No, only frogs. Only frogs.
Only
Dillon actually
frog,
has a
that's
frog that
imitating.
just lives like around here. So
Yeah.
he just kind of, he just has to push a button, and it just kind of.
Yeah, he's in my throat, but it's all like it's.
So another question here. Juan asks, is there any possibilities of a section of Mammal Site where people can look for specific types of contributors? For instance, a biologist in need of a cameraman, composer, or other necessary individuals to help complete projects. That's a great question. And in fact, yes, that is something that we have on the horizon. As we grow the community, we definitely will be able to connect. I mean, that's all part of creating a community too, is creating the connections and fostering those connections, and which is starting to lead to the next part of this conversation about community. Chris says, people definitely need to be reconnected with nature, having personalities that can show that pure, unfiltered love from each of our individual perspectives. Yes. Yoni says, love the answers. P.S. Dillon is very passionate about salamanders.
I wasn't sure if I got that across or not.
You did. You definitely did. Yoni said that she has memories of them as a kid with them all over the place. That's
Oh,
pretty cool. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and comments. Keep them coming. This is awesome. So, as we create empathy, we build empathy. Part of that is building community, and storytelling is integral to building community, and building community is integral to effective conservation. So, what are the ways that we as storytellers can use storytelling to break down old narratives that divide us often and create new, more inclusive narratives that build community where people feel a sense of belonging, maybe a desire to create lasting change toward a more sustainable future?
I can jump on that. I mean, I strongly believe that if we empower people to tell their own stories, and a change who tells the story, we can break down those same old narratives. And we have way too many stories about people coming from outside and saying that forests need to be saved, animals need to be saved, and sometimes it becomes more about people instead of the cause. But imagine how powerful the story would be if, say, a young person could, like from a community, could pick up the camera and say that this is my forest where I grew up, and look at these people coming and logging it illegally. And like, it is so powerful. And I think that's what Mammalz is trying to do as well, right? You're doing that. And that's the kind of world that I want to be a part of, where everyone is empowered to tell and share their own stories and experiences. And that's when I feel like real change can become consistent. Like, change is happening right now, but to consistently, for it to grow, this is what we need to do. Like empower everyone to tell their own stories.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think something in the kind of research world is we oftentimes have to work with local stakeholders, because if we're working especially in the tropics and we're based in a temperate area, or vice versa, sometimes the access to those regions and the knowledge, if we're working on an animal, to even find the species in the first place, is very much in the hands of the people that are living there, and it's their story to tell. And so I think one of the nice things that we can do through communicating the stories in the natural world is through things like film, and because you can actually show a person, you don't necessarily need the words, you can show someone from across the world kind of why you care about something. And you might not even need to include words, but I think the power of being able to tell a story, like Gunjan, you mentioned, just pulling out your phone and presenting something that's just around you that many people might not even know exists, because it's just found in that one region of the world that not everyone can get to. I think that really is the power of community building, especially as more and more people are connected through kind of their phones. More people are getting internet connections, and we're starting to get to be able to do things like live streaming. So we're moving from this kind of you make the film and you put it on YouTube, which has been this kind of amazing tool for people to find out about stories around the world. I know as a researcher, before going to an area, first thing I do is Google and check out YouTube to see if there's something neat walking around, or I'll call up some friends from the area. But now being able to do that live and be able to answer questions from someone halfway across the world that just really likes salamanders but hasn't gotten a chance to see the salamander in that part of the world yet. I think it's great, and then you make new friends too.
Right, and this is, like the human species has been completely based around storytelling. We idolize storytellers. They're the most prominent person of our community, no matter if it's a community of 1 billion, a community of 10. It's storytelling is the most powerful tool we have that our brains can generate. But we're often, up until in the maybe last 20 years, we've really only seen stories from one side, right? It doesn't always have to mean it's like a good side or a bad side, but we've history is written by the victors and whatnot. But now we live in this age of the internet where just like I've been saying, anyone can go grab their phone now and put up a story for someone to see. And it's a story seen from their unique point of view. So now it's no longer just the developer making the story, just the country coming in making the story. It's the person who is there that's making the story. And that's what I think is so interesting. We now can see so many amazing, unique, different viewpoints. And that's why this last decade has been so dominated by stories that went untold or not really known by the public at large for so long. And it's just incredible that we now have these tools to actually get this incredible nuanced take that is no longer a world of a few prominent storytellers. It's a world of 7+ billion potential storytellers that anyone can do. It's just so amazing. And that's how we create a community. We let everyone say their stories. We let everyone actually talk. We let everyone do their own unique take on an issue. And that's why I think that also today's the organization we're trying to help support today is awesome at that, especially in the science research community. We've often seen it going into the jungle, doing all the research, and then taking all the credit back home. And that is so awful. It's ridiculous how often it's happened and how long it's gone on. And it's every time I've been out in the field, the person that lives there knows where the animals are at. Every single time. It's never the guy who came in from on an airplane that's never been there before. It's never the guy who wrote a book and probably never actually went to the spots. It's the person who lives there. And it's just so cool that we can actually see what the people who live there are seeing is today. It's incredible.
That is so,
yeah, it's
so
about
very
species
true.
being discovered by science and not actually discovered.
Right.
Indigenous people have seen those extinct in the wild species for ages.
Absolutely.
Well, Dillon, you mentioned Cool Earth, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Sandy Meyer and thank you so much for your donation to Cool Earth. Once
Hey,
again, this
Sandy.
is,
Yes.
thank you, Sandy. So once again, this is a fundraiser all day long for Cool Earth, and we are seeking to raise $1,000. So check it out. It's in the chat on the chat bot, or you can get a link to Tiltify, which is the platform that we're fostering the donations through. And you could see that also on the link in the live stream. So there's some other questions here. Let's see here. So Cohen asks, what do you guys think about the new documentary Seaspiracy?
I haven't yet watched it, but I've heard that the facts have a bit of how would I put it? They've played a little bit loose with the facts from what I've understood. Chatting with other researchers that have watched it. Personally, I mean, this might also be part of the marketing, but if something ends with spiracy, I'm already a little bit put off. It doesn't seem like it might be a very unbiased story. So, but I definitely have to watch it. But just from discussions with fellow researchers, I've heard there's been some contention there.
Yeah, I also haven't watched it.
Me neither.
Me neither.
Right. Oh man. Well, but it's they
struck out on that one.
But no, I agree with what Arun is saying. Big time. I've heard a lot of issues, and I just think, but that's with any documentary. I think everyone should look into the facts themselves and not just believe what's presented before them, even if it supports your preconceived notions. I definitely think there's issues with fishing, but it needs to be well done. It needs to be well done and actually address all the issues fairly and not throw stuff under the bus that is actually working on helping the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've met and worked with a lot of local fishermen who are actually their livelihood depends on fishing, and they do it very sustainably as opposed to the commercial sector, like the large scale industrial fishing. So from what I've read, it does not weigh in their opinions and that side of the story. So
right.
I don't. Yeah.
I think that's where, I mean, maybe not for Seaspiracy specifically, but I mean, as far as I know, since I can't make a judgment on it, but in general, I think in terms of storytelling, this is where that increase increased discussions with stakeholders globally and these different voices is really going to help. Because I mean, now if others in the audience, for example, have seen Seaspiracy, they can pull out their phone and they can share their opinion and their experiences in that sector. And so now there's an ability to actually be able to hear from people that are involved, and might not just be that one story that's being told through a single documentary, but rather from others kind of reacting to it or responding to it based on their own experiences. And I'd love to see a future where we start to see documentaries almost like in academia, where sometimes a team of researchers will publish one paper and another team will kind of publish a counter argument. It'd be great to start seeing documentaries being published, but then a counter documentary being published, and maybe online is the best place to do that.
Yeah, and I've actually had very mixed feelings about this, about all this information coming out about Seaspiracy, because on one hand I'm like, oh no, it's another documentary that ends up damaging the community, right? Because it's presenting not great facts, and like now a lot of scientists are disagreeing with it. But then I started realizing that this has actually created a conversation for a lot of people who never even realized that there is a nuanced take to fishing. Like there's a massive difference between commercial fishing and local fishing. Mm-hmm. And there's a massive difference between all different types of NGOs, which I think was another argument with Seaspiracy. Mm-hmm. So even if it's not like perfectly correct, and I 100% do not think that the filmmakers were intentionally trying to create this controversy, it's created conversations for a lot of people on all sides to see that this is a very nuanced and multifaceted issue, even if it wasn't presented as such in the original source material. So there's always like which is sort of our, I don't want to say our job, but like I feel like it's our moral duty as like science communicators to inject ourselves in and sort of give a little bit more of a nuanced take.
I agree with all of you. There's a couple more questions. Well, here's a comment. Margot says, true, anyone can pick up their phone and it's pretty amazing, and then we make new friends. Yeah, I think that is pretty darn cool. And then Juan says, for all of you, who inspired you to get into your specific fields of work?
I'll go.
Okay.
I have it's always a little bit more awkward silence on Zoom because you're just knowing there's a little bit of lag. Yeah, so my influences in terms of people is sort of multifaceted. Because I was originally, I got into science. I got into storytelling and science because of my grandfather. He is just this incredible storyteller and has a very science-minded view of the world. Like he's the type of person you go walking through a forest and he can point out every single tree. He'll know everything about them. He'll, just like that incredible way of telling stories about nature. And I'm realizing more and more how much that has influenced me now. But it's like, I've also had all of these outside influences that I guess added that more like passionate drive for me, specifically reptiles and amphibians, like salamanders and whatnot. Steve Irwin was massive when I was a kid. I used to be deathly scared of everything to do with nature. But it was like it's like someone who's like a scaredy cat that loves watching horror movies. I was always consuming nature documentaries, and particularly I was up every single morning watching Crocodile Hunter. So that I can't understate how much that has influenced me in what I want to study, what I'm really interested in, but also like how nature-focused communicators and storytellers that can so easily feed off of each other and influence and change each other. It's definitely, we're all in that same boat, and we're really making it float like really well.
I think you're absolutely correct about the community. I mean, as a researcher, I was fortunate, but both of my parents are scientists. They were graduate students when I was born, and so as a result, I was always in the lab or always in the field with graduate students, and so both my parents are a huge influence as to who I am today, but also kind of being unofficially babysat by graduate students who are always very passionate about whatever they're studying. I think that passion is what's really contagious. When a grad student sees a young person just hanging around and they're growing a chicken liver or something in a petri dish. I mean, I know I love showing off all these kind of crazy random things to anyone that's around. And so as a result, I'd say that that community of students and researchers kind of growing up, that was a big influence for my current direction, but also my interest in communicating the really cool stuff that happens really behind the scenes.
Yeah, like Dylan said, I'm really jealous of the kids today. Like they have so much more content, like wildlife content to watch. And I mean, I pretty much grew up watching David Attenborough, and I always dreamt of doing what I'm doing today. So that's nice that I'm able to do this. But David Attenborough and Jeff Corbin, I think I like Jeff Corbin was huge in India that time. I think the only person that the only guy, David Attenborough and Jeff Corbin were the only two people that we saw growing up here. And but as I grew older, I realized that we were like watching very rosy documentaries and everything seemed that it was all okay around the world. And then I grew up in a bubble. So then I like that is what made me a conservation filmmaker, because then I realized that I wanted to do more than just show pretty pictures. I wanted to tell like truthful stories and, show it as it is, but at the same time get more people to watch, because obviously if your conservation stories are depressing, then nobody's going to watch. So I think that's what inspired me, like a mix of different things and realizing that this is what I want to do different. So
I think one of the interesting things when you think about this, storytellers need our own community. That's just as important, to have this connection and community that we're building with each other, and the support and the ability to the free exchange of ideas and to just feed off of each other. We often get thrown to the wind, and we're like strewn all over the world. And I think one of the beautiful things about having Mammalz and Zoom and these, the ability to connect with each other in real time is that we can live in places all across the world and have community now. And that to me is a game changer. I think it really is. And that's going to allow us to be inclusive with everybody now. We've got about a minute left. So is there any, I know time flies. So does anybody want to make a closing statement or have any comments to make?
I think this panel is a great example of just how widespread the community can be. I mean, we're located in many different time zones in a single call, and the audience is also located in many different time zones, and I'm sure their communities as well. So who knows that the things that we've discussed today are, those ideas will continue to live on kind of around the world. And I think, something like this and Mammalz as a whole really kind of, I think, encapsulates that future of this entire industry and really the future of storytelling as we see kind of in the natural world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Arun, for wrapping up. Listen, thank you all. Gunjan, Arun, Dillon, thank you so much for being on this panel. And thank you, everybody in the Mammalz community, for tuning in. Onwards, we're going to build this community and we're going to make the world a better place. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Oh, and I
Great
just
rest of your night.
I just wanted to also shout out to Dirty Trails Clean Mind, who just made a donation to Cool Earth. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you so very
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
All right. So